It's time for a bit more laid back of a video because today I'm going to be putting together my new server. Alright, let's start this off a bit macroscopically. So this is a Supermicro X9 DRD-IF server motherboard. It has two 2011 socket Xeon processors. It has 8 slots for memory between them. I think they're DDR3. And today we're going to be installing it into this server chassis, which has 16 SATA SAS hot swap bays, 2 5¼ inch bays, is 4U, and this is either a Norco RPC 4216 or a Norco RPC 4116. I have no idea what the difference is between the two, so I can't really tell. I bought this locally, so I didn't buy it online with specs or anything, and I didn't even get all the parts to go to it. I got enough parts though, so this works out. I did get the top though. That's just missing because it adds weight, and I have to move this thing all around while I'm filming. So you may not even see that in this video. That's just because I'm tired. Alright, let's get into more detail now, starting with the motherboard. If this looks familiar, that's because it was sent to me by Cody in the first mail video, I think. So I'm super grateful to have gotten this, because this is going to make a world of a difference to me, which I'll get to explaining later. I'm gonna get so much use out of this thing. So what it has in it is 96 gigabytes of memory and 2 E5-2690 V1, I believe, Xeon CPUs. Now this board is from 2012, but that doesn't mean it's a slouch. These have 8 cores on them, 16 threads, so 32 total threads between everything on here. This thing, it's a serious number cruncher. Now, if you saw that same mail video, you might remember that there was a little bit of shipping damage here. So this is the USB firmware port, I believe, and that was totally ripped off. So I just have a piece of vinyl tape in here. It's interleaved between all the pins. I should really just desolder it, but I'm lazy. So yeah, that's isolated. That's not a problem because I don't need to use that. But the serial port and the VGA port were both pretty badly bent in shipping, and I think that might have caused some problems. I don't know. There's some pretty strange behavior going on with this motherboard, but there is one possible other reason that happened, and that kind of has to do with the server chassis. Alright, so these are the 24-pin ATX Molex power connector and the 2 power input connections for the motherboard. Now, I did not originally get this sent with the power supply. I was offered the entire chassis that this thing was in. It was in a Supermicro 1U chassis that came with just everything it was supposed to have. But shipping on that was going to be like $100 or more. And yeah, I wasn't super thrilled about the prospect of that. So I looked around locally and I found that Norco chassis for sale, and it was $125, which was about the same price as shipping was going to be for the 1U chassis, and it was a 4U with 16 drive bays. So it seemed like a no-brainer to just buy a local chassis and then rehome this into it. But there was one problem: the power supply. Now, I'm not all that familiar with enterprise-grade hardware, so I was not aware of what was going to be waiting for me, and we have these 2 8-pin power connectors here. Now, one of these is pretty obviously an 8-pin CPU connection, but the other, well, actually, they're the same pinout, aren't they, now that I'm looking at them? That's annoying. Well, yeah, the other's the same thing. I thought at first that I could just plug the GPU connection from a standard power supply into that, and it did fit with just like barely any effort. I thought I was pushing against the latch on here, but it turned out there was a small little ridge that pushes against like right somewhere on the plastic. I think it was that one. It didn't even leave a mark that's permanent. You can't even see it. Anyway, that's not what you're supposed to do, and it was shorting the power supply due to how that's pinned out in there. Now, I don't think any stray voltages got into the motherboard itself, because the power supply was shorting and it was detecting the short and just immediately shutting off. So I don't think any damage has been done to this motherboard from that, but this motherboard is not unscathed. Video out on this motherboard does not work, and it's not just that the VGA connector was bent and slightly messed up in transit, like the GPU on board isn't working. It's the weirdest thing. I seriously can't explain it. I tried troubleshooting this thing for like 2 days straight, and I couldn't figure it out. In the end, I found the only working configuration was to put a GPU in here and then use the video out on that, which is a real shame because the onboard management for this board is amazing and can do VGA capture, so you can have the raw VGA signal over the internet with a virtual KVM. It's awesome. There's a handful of times I got it to work through some magic witchcraft combination of parts and luck that I could not replicate, but oh man, it is the most frustrating thing. There's something seriously wrong with the video out on this thing. Alright, and now for 2 more problems sort of related to the chassis choices that were made. So that's it for heat sinks. That's all I got. No fans, no nothing. That's it. Because this was in a 1U chassis, the air management was ducted in such a way that the air from just the server case fans would pass through the CPU coolers and cool the processors. So direct fans on the processor coolers were not necessary, so there's no provision to have them on here. Now, I'd come up with a really lame workaround for this. In the interim, when I needed to use this because of how much more powerful these processors are than the ones in the Xserve. So here's a brief look at what that was like. Alright, I'm recording this before the intro to the video so you can see how this was set up, but this is how I've been using this server, well, until I got the HP Z820, because the CPUs in that are the same as what are in this, so they're kind of similarly performant. But here's why I haven't shown this yet. The CPU coolers themselves, yeah, so those are just the fans that would come on the back of the case over there with Noctua quiet mounts jammed into the fins on the 1U heat sinks. Yeah, that's not a good idea. So I haven't shown this on video because I didn't want to encourage that, because it was a really bad idea. I was only turning this on, running some number crunching services, watching the temps. I actually had a while loop with sensors running so I could watch the temps while it was going on, and then once it finished I would shut it off after it cooled back down. So yeah, the temperatures never actually got bad, but that was the problem. Yeah, that wasn't a good idea, but it worked and there was no damage or problems with that. So, you know, just that was fine for now. I do have a solution though. I got some real heat sinks for this thing. So let me crack one of these open. I've got a bigger, badder one, and I'm really looking forward to finally getting some real heat sinks on here, because yeah, it was somewhat nerve-wracking, you know, using it in that previous setup. So yeah, this is going to be the way forward. Now there was one other problem, and you got a slight hint of it in the last shot there, and that was the GPU. Now, if we look again at these heat sinks and look at, well, this one in particular, and where it is relative to the PCI slots, there's a bit of a problem. So I mentioned that the VGA port doesn't work, and then I have to put a GPU in there. Well, you can't just put a GPU in there, because almost every single one of them collides with the CPU heatsink. This was a top-notch design, Supermicro. There are some boards that they have where the processors are both over here, this one's a little farther back. There's different arrangements. This one in particular, not like that. This was actually meant to have a right angle PCI connector that would allow you to slot a card in like that, but that still doesn't give you the clearance. So I don't know. I do have a solution for the long term to fix this, but in the short term, I found this Radeon card, you'll never guess where, and that does fit just fine. Barely, like, just, oh man, it couldn't come any closer to that. Thankfully, this one's actually a little bit farther in, so that won't be a problem. But, whew, yeah, that was close. So, yeah, and again, I have to have this in there, or I can't see video out on this thing, which means, like, no OS installation or any of that stuff. So, yay! Because the IPMI, the management interface for the serial port, is kind of spotty as well. I don't know if that's related. Maybe it's just the IPMI that's bad. I don't know. I put a lot of time into troubleshooting this, and it was just, it was mind-numbing enough as it was. But I know I'm going to be doing a little bit more of that for this build today. All right, that's enough yakking here. Let's actually get something done and swap out the CPU coolers for the new ones. Now, this was one of the first hurdles to getting this server built and delaying this video on it. Because these are not just normal CPU coolers. These are 2011 socket processors, but these sockets are narrow sockets. So you can see how they are much narrower than they are long. They take special CPU coolers, and there really aren't a lot of them available. So I didn't have a lot of choices. I was initially looking on eBay because I figured this is a 2012 board. There probably aren't that many options left out there, and some of the ones on eBay were kind of expensive, especially for the taller chassis like I was going for. So I kind of just put it off for a while. Well, eventually I got the correct idea and looked on Newegg, and I found one for a reasonable price. So I can finally continue on with this, going with those. Still, though, it wasn't cheap because I do have to buy 2 of them to use with this. So, yeah, it's not the best. All told, probably would have saved money getting the 1U case in, but I really wanted to be able to put multiple PCI cards in here, as you'll find out as I work on this build more. So, yeah, while that would have been a good idea, initially, down the road it wouldn't have made a ton of sense, so maybe I'm going to have saved money? I don't know. We'll see. And there we go. The 2 processors. I am going to go ahead and clean them before I put on the new coolers, and I'm going to not use the thermal paste that's on there. For one, it doesn't feel very moist, and for all I know, these were made in 2012, so that could be 2012 thermal paste on there. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and replace that. All right, now I am going to take the lazier way out and just clean these in socket. Should really probably remove it, but I don't want to. This will be good enough. Ah, yeah, that's looking fine. Yeah, the stuff on here was pretty crusty. It came off in, like, thick globs, so it was not going to work out. But I noticed this isn't really the best quality heatsink. There is a lot of space in between the copper heat pipes and the heatsink itself, so there isn't good thermal connection between these. That's really not desirable. So yeah, I'm not going to go ahead and recommend these. They'll get the job done, but yeah, if there were another option for a reasonable price, there were actual ones, but they were like $50. So, just for air cooled. There's nothing special about any of these. So, yeah, I wouldn't pick these again, probably. So, yeah, I don't see any solder in here, actually. I don't think these are connected in any way. So, well, it would be brazed because this is aluminum. Yeah, I'll throw up a picture here of the heat sinks in the Z820, and you can see those are awesome. They are properly connected, so that's how it should be. This loose space in here, yeah, that's lame. All right, pretty much ready to put the CPU heat sinks on, so I figured I'd try and get a beauty shot here of me applying the thermal paste. I feel like his stuff could have been mixed a bit before it was put on, but oh well. There we go. That is not enough. Don't apply your thermal paste from the camera feed. There we go. That's good. Wow, that's way more fluidic than my older Arctic Silver. Maybe I should change it out more often. I'm not super happy with how these are going to go on because there's more thermal mass towards the back for me, but if I put them on any other way, well, this way, then the fan would have to, well, take up the same space that the graphics card does. So, yeah, that's not going to work. Oh well, here we go. Alright, there we go. I kind of like the heatsink underneath, but the fins are pointed the wrong way, so it's arguably useful. We'll do a little bit, but yeah, that's wrong. There's also no direct airflow through there, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, and now for the other socket. Alright, there we go. Also, hey, Dynatron, on the, 0% chance you're watching this, don't use round head screws on a heatsink. Use something that'll capture the screwdriver if you miss slightly. It's just bad design. Alright, I'm, close to done here. I put the RAM back in and I used some compressed air to blow any dust or debris out of the slots for the memory. Because I had some inconsistent, problems before with that. But anyway, I'm going to put the fans on here for the CPU coolers, and it turns out this board doesn't have CPU fan headers. It just has system fan headers. None of them are for CPU fans. The motherboard manual calls them both CPU fan headers, so yeah, what I decided I'm going to do is this is fan 1 and this is fan 2. I'm just going to go ahead and connect it to processor A and processor B and just call that good enough. And I hope it figures it out because that's as close as I'm going to get. So, yep. All right. Let's go ahead and put these on. I'm not a fan of the plastic snaps, although that does make it a little bit easier, really. Yeah, so we'll just do an out of case test here first of everything, make sure it's all right, and then I'll go back and I'll do a proper cable run on these. But, yeah. Oh, that feels so good to finally have correct heat sinks on there, so I'm not going to be just ruining this board with my super ghetto setup. Alright, nearly ready to get this powered up for the first time with the new CPU coolers, and we still have to take a look at the power problem. Well, after going through everything with Cody when he sent this and the myriad of issues I had, he was actually able to send me the original Supermicro power supply that was in the 1U chassis with this motherboard, so I can use that. However, I think it's a 480 watt power supply, so if I'm going to use the full power of the 16 bay case I have, I am going to have to replace this with a beefier power supply in the future, but at least this is good enough for now, and it's not like I'm going to be dropping 16 hard drives in here in the beginning anyway, so it's going to take me a while to get to that. I do now know that there are adapters you can get to make, in particular, this power connector, so I can do that. I didn't have any then, and I'd never encountered that before, so now I know. Yeah, let's get this connected and fire this thing up for the first time. Well, in this video. All right, let's get this baby fired up. Oh man, those fans are pleasantly quiet for how short and thick they are. I was expecting those to be hurricane force. Oh, that's nice. I think that means that the loudest fans in the system are actually going to be those ones from the back. Ah, all right. Takes a while to boot this sucker. Yeah, cool. All right, should be good. But anyway, yeah, these ones are super loud. We'll see later. So we don't have anything on here to boot right now, so it's gonna just fail here. But I got a fun idea. So on this flash drive is FreeDOS, because I had to update the BIOS on the HP Z820 recently, and the easiest way to do that was over this, because the Linux method uses an RPM package and it doesn't install cleanly on Ubuntu, blah, 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 blah. FreeDOS was just the best. So let's try and boot FreeDOS on this thing and see if we can play a game. It means I will have to connect a disk drive though, so let me go find one of those that's actually SATA. Okay, new problem. While I was finding a disk drive, I left this on, and these are super hot for having a fan on and it being idling. So these aren't spinning fast enough. That's the problem. That's not good. So this thing's probably gonna overheat under a real load. Okay, those have to be a sufficient cooler. I mean, compared to what was on there before, the fans just probably aren't spinning enough. Let's re-angle this and get it powered up with the fans visible and see what they're doing. There's no rule that says the test can't be fun, so I'm going to have Doom in the disk drive here so we can try running that off FreeDOS. But yeah, let's go ahead and see what happens here. Okay, no CD drive. That's really annoying. I guess I could put Doom directly on the flash drive, because that works. So yeah, that'd be a pain. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna go ahead and skip to booting Linux and running sensors so I can see what the core temps are, because it's making me real nervous. So yeah, DOS runs, but it's a new computer. It's kind of a pain. So man, you gotta walk through a lot of hoops to get LM sensors installed on Ubuntu server. But all right, here we go. That looks a lot better. I think that the CPUs might have actually been maxed out in the just idling in BIOS, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of stupid, but maybe. Because yeah, those are perfectly fine numbers. I mean, 55 there, that's not super encouraging. We're looking at 39, 34 at the low, and 53 at the high on CPU 1, and on CPU 0, we've got like 38 is the low to 45, 46 is the high, and that's seems to be pretty consistent there. So and could also, you know what? Let me just try something here really quick. Let me move one of these over one. Hey. All right. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, so I think that's, which one's that? I don't remember, but we should be able to see here in a moment. Oh, yeah, now we're talking. Wow, okay. That is super strange. I wonder why. These must be some kind of chipset headers. That's so stupid. I wonder if these are the CPU headers then, not 1 and 2. God, this is dumb. They should just have them labeled as the CPU fan headers. That's so stupid. Yeah, here we go. The hotter CPU, 30 flat. So we're almost hitting 20s here. 29, bam. I can tell you the ambient temperature in here is pretty warm. I can get a pyrometer and get you an actual number here. Okay, pyrometer here. So let's measure my desk. And 30C. So, yeah, that getting down into the 20s. 23C there. That's some conflicting information, because you can't go colder than ambient on air coolers, but we'll just pretend that's not happening. Yeah, so that's that's obviously a lot better of a temperature. So yeah, I'm much happier with that now. I wonder what the deal is with those headers, because those suck. Yeah, that's really annoying. I'm not thrilled at the concept that just 2 of the headers in here are useless. Why are they so slow? That's really strange. I don't know. I'm gonna send the person a message who gave me this board, and we'll see if they have any insight onto that. But until that, I'm gonna keep moving on here. So yeah, we'll move on to the next step. Now that we know the CPU coolers are working, I am very happy we took this step before we put it in the case. Because, yeah, I'm planning on getting it all nice and cable managed in there. So, yeah. Welcome to the fun of this board. I figured I would show you what happens if I try and boot it without a GPU and just connect directly to the VGA on the card, and it worked. It beeped a whole lot. Like, let me see if I can replicate that. Let's see. Come on. There we go. So it has a whole bunch of error beeps. I don't remember them offhand right now. It's not really that important. But, you know, I guess it gets something out on video. Yeah, there. Alright, I guess it's gonna work now. I don't know why. You know, the memory slots were actually kind of, dirty. I wonder if that's it. I absolutely tried to clean them out before, though, so I don't know. This thing, this is the only computer part I think I've ever had that would truly make me superstitious about anything. So, I don't know. It's almost bordering on frustrating to see this work now. Oh well, I'll just proceed from here pretending that the VGA out's always going to work, and we'll see if that bites me later. I'll keep the video card on hand in case I need to throw it back in there. Actually, before we move on, let's try something else out. If the VGA on board is going to work, then theoretically the capture could work as well. So let's see if we can do that. So I have network connected to the remote interface. I'm using the Supermicro IPMI app, which is the remote management for this. Boom! That is remote VGA working. Let me turn my brightness up here. Yeah! So the monitor is connected to VGA as well, but the app is connected to VGA in addition. So I could bring up a virtual keyboard here. Oh, I don't have my keyboard, and there's escape. So, delete. There's no delete. Okay, well, man, this is quicker than the monitor because it doesn't have to do resolution switching. That's hilarious. So, yeah, that's more than a little helpful here. Delete. So, actually, I want to get into BIOS here. So, I was given some advice by the person who sent me this board as to the fans, and trying to manage them. So, let's see what we can do. So, I was told you should be able to directly configure what each fan header does. At least I think that's what was trying to be conveyed. I was kind of reading it a little bit quickly here. But, yeah, I need to get in there and check that out. Okay, so I've just done a large amount of testing and changes, and yeah, so let me get you up to speed. This was all extremely boring, and you will not have missed anything of interest, but I can recap it because it's good to know. There's some really stupid stuff going on here. Okay, so first of all, the fan profiles are only set through the remote management app, and you only get a limited number of options, which is just like standard speed, full speed, and then some optimal ones, which are just mix fan speeds between the different fan connectors on there for different zones for peripherals or CPUs and etc. So I can set it to full and it picks up. Not a big deal there. That's what it's expected. But optimal really reduces the fans. So I was doing some reading online because this is kind of strange. So apparently full is 100%, that's expected. Standard is 50%, and optimal is 30% on the CPUs, and it should be 75% elsewhere. I'm not really sure about that, but here's what's really dumb. Okay, so in the background here, I'm using BYOBU to split some stuff so you can see multiple things going on. So this is H-top. These are the different cores, the different threads actually, and their utilization. So it's woefully underutilized right now. And up here I have sensors and LS CPU running, so you can see the CPU frequency right here, and then the CPU temps here and here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Sysbench and run a prime number calculation, and this will stress the CPUs for about a minute. So we can see it's all maxed here, all these processes. So the CPU turbo's up to 3.3 gigahertz, which seems pretty good actually. And then the CPUs start heating up because they're all under max load here. But you'll see that while this is on optimal, it's not going to speed up to protect the CPUs. Matter of fact, I've let this run through the whole test. Again, this only runs a minute, and the CPUs get over 70 degrees Celsius doing this. Now, the power supply fan just picked up in speed, but not the CPUs. It's kind of ridiculous. So apparently, for super micro boards like this, it's a thing for people to try and write their own custom fan scripts that utilize an IPMI feature where you can send raw commands over the IPMI interface, which lets you set the fan speeds explicitly. Now that these are heat soaked, actually it didn't appear to get too hot. I didn't pay attention to what the max was there. I have seen it get over 70 before. I have screenshots of that. So I'm going to, just to protect this thing here, set the fans back to standard so this doesn't get heat damage. But anyway, yeah, this is, that's really dumb. So it's, yeah, not really possible for these to dynamically, it's not possible for the motherboard to dynamically change the fan speeds. That's really stupid. Oh, yeah, another fun thing. So this was sent to me with IPMI version 3.52. Yeah. Turns out that may not be the correct version. So this board has 8 fan headers on it, and fan headers 7 and 8 were not being shown in here. So I changed the fan headers. Now, that also fixed fan headers 1 and 2. I think I had the issues with that on video here. Yeah, so fan headers 1 and 2 now work correctly. So the correct IPMI version is important. The person who sent this to me is going to go check some other boards they have that are the same board that they have on that firmware version. So they're going to let me know how theirs are running. I'm really curious to hear about that because this was not working right for me. So, yeah. That's where everything is. Now, I think I'm finally ready to stick this in the new case and get it finalized and in there how I want. But I do have to do a couple things before I can stick this in there because it is a used case and, well, let's go check it out. But first, there's one more thing about the motherboard I want to show you before we do that. Okay, so this isn't a big deal thing that I'm pointing out here, but I just thought it was kind of weird. So this is the header for the buttons and LEDs, status, that yada yada. And it's not labeled right next to it here. There's nothing but like little ref deses and some transistors or diodes or something. And I thought that you had to refer to the quick start guide or the manual to get this figured out. But it turns out all this is labeled all the way over here, which was just kind of weird to me. And I wish I'd known that earlier because it was a big pain getting everything wired in and looking over the manual and then looking back at this. I do wish they'd just kind of like maybe move these over here and then put that there, but whatever. This is kind of strange. Well, that's it for now. I hadn't originally planned on splitting this into multiple parts, but when I uploaded the 41 gigabyte rendered file to YouTube, it never finished processing it. It's been 14 hours now, and the best it's coughed up is 720p. So I don't think it likes such a big 4K 60 frames per second file. So I'm going to split this up over 3 parts and release it over the next week. Everything's already edited and rendered, I just have to split it up and make it uploaded. So you can stay tuned to see these next videos coming out quite soon, and I'm on Patreon if you want to support the channel. But for now, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed that.